Have you ever wondered what true freedom really means? Not the kind of freedom that is loud and restless, but the kind that moves silently within you, calm and unbreakable. The kind that cannot be taken away, even when the world feels heavy. That was the freedom the samurai sought, and the path they followed to reach it was not built on comfort or desire, but on discipline. They called it Bushido, the way of the warrior. And though centuries have passed, that path still speaks to those who feel the pull of something deeper, something steadier, something freer than chaos. If you think like a samurai, you begin to understand that freedom is not the absence of limits, it is the mastery of them. The samurai lived by rules so strict that most people today would call them suffocating. Yet within those boundaries they found a peace and clarity that many of us spend our entire lives chasing. So how can a life of restraint lead to true freedom? That is what this reflection is about. Picture the first breath of morning in feudal Japan. Mist curls above the earth like a veil. The sound of a temple bell hums softly through the valley. A samurai stands barefoot in the cold courtyard of his home. His sword lies before him on the ground, clean and silent. He bows to it, not as a weapon, but as a mirror of his spirit. The blade is polished, the reflection clear, because a clouded weapon would only reveal a clouded mind. He has already been awake for hours. His day began with meditation, breathing, and stillness is less than #0. 5# is greater than, each movement measured, each gesture deliberate. There is no rush, no noise, only presence. In this stillness he finds strength, and in that strength he finds freedom. The samurai did not seek freedom from rules, but from confusion. They believe that when the mind is mastered, life itself flows effortlessly. And when the mind is lost, even in the midst of pleasure, you become a prisoner of your own thoughts. To them, the mind was like a sword. If left untrained, it rusts. If sharpened daily, it becomes clear, decisive, and capable of cutting through illusion. A master once said, "Control the mind, and the body will follow. Lose the mind, and even your sword becomes your enemy." That was the core of Bushido. The art of discipline not as punishment, but as liberation. The way of the samurai rested on 7 virtues, each a reflection of that freedom through discipline: righteousness, courage, benevolence, respect, honesty, honor, and loyalty. But these were not commandments to obey blindly. They were living ideas, meant to be tested and proven through daily life. Righteousness was not about perfection. It was the constant effort to align with what is right, even when it costs you comfort or approval. The samurai believed that clarity of heart led to clarity of action. When the spirit was steady, the path became visible. Courage was not the absence of fear. It was the ability to walk with fear and still remain composed. They did not seek to destroy fear, but to understand it is less than #0. 5# is greater than. Fear, they said, is the first shadow of awareness. When you face it without running, you discover that its edges are soft. Benevolence gave balance to their strength. A sword without compassion is just an instrument of destruction. But in the hands of one who values life, it becomes a tool of protection. Power finds meaning only when it serves something beyond itself. Respect shaped how they moved through the world. To bow before another was not weakness, it was acknowledgement. Every encounter, every moment, was sacred. To disrespect even the smallest thing was to disrupt the harmony that sustains all life. Honesty bound their words to their spirit. A samurai's word was truth made visible. Lies clouded the mind, and a clouded mind could not be trusted to act with precision. Honor was the invisible armor that no blade could pierce. It was not a show of pride, but a quiet peace within. Even in loss, even in death, honor remained untouched when integrity stayed whole. And loyalty was devotion to one's principles. It was the root that held the spirit steady through every storm. To betray your word was to betray your very self. These virtues were not just rules to follow, but mirrors to reflect upon. They guided the samurai to see that every action, no matter how small, was an expression of the inner world. If the heart was calm, the sword was calm. If the mind was divided, the world itself seemed broken. And this is where we find their secret is less than #0. 5# is greater than discipline was not their prison, it was their teacher. Each moment of restraint polished the soul, the way stone polishes a blade. There is a story told of a young apprentice who grew impatient with his training. He asked his master, "How long will it take for me to become skilled?" The master replied, 10 years. The student frowned and said, "But what if I train twice as hard, for twice as long each day?" The master smiled, then 20 years. The student was silent, confused. The master continued, "The one who rushes misses the way." The samurai understood that mastery is not speed but depth. You cannot force a tree to grow by pulling on its branches. You can only water the roots and trust time to do the rest. In their practice, repetition was sacred. Every swing of the sword, every bow, every breath was a chance to meet oneself again. Over and over, they trained not to perfect the motion but to dissolve the ego within it, until the movement became pure intention, effortless and whole. To think like a samurai is to live this way. To find stillness not by escaping life, but by moving within it fully awake. Even in death, they found lessons of freedom. They meditated on it daily, not out of morbidity, but out of gratitude. Knowing that death could come at any moment made every sunrise sacred. Every cup of tea became a ceremony, every conversation a farewell filled with presence. They wrote death poems to express their peace with impermanence. Lines that spoke not of fear but of acceptance is less than #0. 5# is greater than, because when you truly face the end, you realize how precious each beginning is. Freedom, they believed, was not found by avoiding death but by understanding it. The samurai's discipline touched everything they did. From the way they dressed to the way they walked, nothing was careless. They understood that how you do anything reveals how you live. The polishing of a sword was the polishing of the soul. The stillness before battle was the same stillness found in meditation. Their strength was quiet, their courage invisible. Because real strength does not shout, it simply stands. When we look at the world today, filled with noise, speed, and distraction, the samurai way may seem ancient, even impossible. But its essence is timeless. You can practice Bushido without armor or blade. You can live it by how you treat others, how you speak, how you think, how you choose. Discipline begins the moment you decide to act with intention. It is in the pause before you speak in anger. It is in the choice to do what is right, even when no one will see it. It is in the calm you hold when everything around you shakes. Every moment is a chance to return to the way. The samurai carried 2 swords, one for the enemy outside and one for the enemy within. The second was invisible, forged from awareness and patience. That is the sword you carry now. Every time you observe your mind instead of reacting, you draw it. Every time you act with integrity, you sharpen it is less than #0. 5# is greater than, every time you let go of pride, you polish it. And in time, that sword becomes your greatest ally. The world tells you to chase freedom by breaking every limit. But the samurai discovered that true freedom comes from mastering them. When your desires no longer rule you, when your fears no longer guide you, when your ego no longer blinds you, then you are free. This freedom is quiet, steady, invisible. It does not need applause. It does not seek approval. It simply is. When you walk with discipline, you walk with purpose. And purpose gives meaning to every breath. The tea you drink, the words you speak, the way you listen, the way you stand, all become expressions of the same inner harmony. That is the true art of Bushido. A river flows freely because its banks hold it. A bow releases an arrow precisely because it is drawn with restraint. Discipline gives form to energy, and within that form, life finds grace. So when you think of the samurai, do not think of battlefields or blades. Think of a person who has learned to govern the storms within. Think of someone who acts not from impulse but from harmony. That is what it means to think like a samurai. And when you begin to live that way yourself, something shifts. You no longer feel torn between chaos and control. You start to move through the world like water, calm yet unstoppable. So ask yourself now, what would it look like to live each day with such balance? To wake not for duty, but for clarity, is less than #0. 5# is greater than to treat your routines not as burdens, but as rituals. To see discipline not as limitation, but as devotion. That is how freedom is born. Freedom is not found when you escape from responsibility. It is found when you meet it fully, with grace and strength. And perhaps that is the lesson the samurai left for us. That true freedom does not come from doing whatever you want. It comes from knowing who you are and acting in alignment with that truth, no matter the circumstance. The way of the samurai is not lost. It lives quietly in the choices you make every day. When you take a breath before you react. When you keep your word even when it is difficult. When you respect others even when they do not deserve it. When you stay calm when the world wants you angry. Each of these moments is a step on that ancient path. And each step is an act of freedom. So as this reflection comes to an end, take a quiet moment now. Breathe slowly, deeply. Feel the stillness beneath the noise. That stillness has been waiting for you all along. That is the mind of the samurai. That is the discipline behind true freedom.